What is up, everybody? Welcome to my Photoshop tips and tricks. This is my ongoing mini-series for the past few episodes, talking specifically what I do to fix portraits, portrait retouching workflow. And I've talked about things such as brightening the eyes, sharpening hair, whitening teeth. And this episode is going to be about skin smoothing and skin softening. Then, at the end, I am going to be doing an entire long video from start to finish, of my entire portrait retouching workflow, everything we've learned in one video. Okay? Let's get right into it. I shot this in my portrait studio with a hair light. I believe this was a 4 light ratio in my private portrait studio with a black background. And we're going to be doing some skin softening on this example. There's multiple ways of doing it. Here's my method. Okay? Now, skin softening can be done multiple ways. A lot of people have their own way. Again, I always say this in the beginning of a tutorial. I'm going to be using a little bit higher values than you normally would. I do that for a lot of reasons. So you guys can see the results better. Photoshop degrades the quality of the video when you upload it. It's harder to see on your screen. So, and I know there's what I like to call porcelain doll effects. So you may not want to use as crazy, values when you're doing skin retouching, because then it could start to look fake. But the way that I do it is you also can keep the texture intact. A lot of people I notice on YouTube do these tutorials, and I've talked to a lot of people in the past that do skin softening and retouching. But it looks so fake, there's no skin textures. You want skin textures because you want it to look realistic, but you also want it to look really, really nice. So we're going to talk about painting. We're going to talk about reconstructing the whole face with these techniques, but also what areas to avoid, because you don't want the skin softening on certain areas. That includes the face, the mouth. That includes the eyebrows. That includes, outside of the face, the skin. That includes the eyes, underneath the nostrils. There's certain highlights of your image that you want to keep the softness away from, okay? So you're kind of resculpting the image. The first thing that I want to do is work non-destructively. So how do you do that? You make a copy of the layer. Now, if I was working on a client or an actual project, I would start renaming these images. But for this demonstration, we don't have to do that. The first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to invert this image. Okay. Make sure we're on the layer. Looks funky, right? Almost looks like an infrared. But don't worry. We're going to fix it up here. What I want to do is I want to use my blending modes. We've talked about blending modes in the past. For this particular project, we're going to be using what's called a vivid light. Okay? And then on that layer, we're going to be going to filter, and we're going to be going what's called high pass. It's under filter other, high pass. Okay? I think we're going to use about 24 here for this particular demonstration. Again, you may not use these high values. I'm doing this so you're able to see the results on camera, because I do realize in person it's different on video, on YouTube, especially if you're using a smartphone or an iPad. This isn't the easiest thing to see, okay? And then we're going to be doing blur, Gaussian blur. And I think for this particular demonstration, we're going to use a value of 4. Okay? There we go. Now, this looks good. the smoothing of the skin is applied. But the problem is, like all problems we encounter in Photoshop, obviously, it doesn't have the intelligence to know in your brain what you want to apply it to. So it applies it to the whole image. We've talked about this before when we were doing sharpening. It sharpens the whole image. So if you watch that video, how did we apply it to just the areas we want? Well, you really can't. But if you remember, we painted those in. We painted the sharpness into the eyes. We painted the sharpness into the hair. So how do we hide this? We hide it behind what's called a layer mask. So we apply a layer mask. I applied 2 layer masks. That's not good. Of course, the layer mask is in white, so we want to invert it. Now the mask, the effect that we applied as far as the Gaussian blur and the high pass filter is now hidden behind a black mask. You know what I'm going to ask? How do you paint in a black mask? You paint with the color white, then you use black again to subtract. So let's zoom in onto our face. Let's get a brush. Let's mess with our bracket keys. Okay? And let's start painting in. Okay? Now, I would take my time, and I would really use a whole mess of different brush sizes. Okay? Look at that already. Wow. And I'm using this method here, showing you this during my portrait retouching sessions, because this is one of the #1 portrait retouching techniques. And again, I'm using high values. I'm using an opacity of 100 because I want you guys to see the effects over the internet, over the video here. But I'm going to show you how I would dial this down. Stay away from the hair. Stay away from the highlights. Stay away from the eyes. Stay away from the lips. And if you do all that, guys, you're going to be all right. I will say this. This takes practice. Okay? This takes practice. You're not going to get this on the first try. And it's not going to come out the way you want it right away. It's just not. It can be tricky. Now, as you can see, I left these alone, these structures of the face, the curves. You want those details in there. You want to get in here with a real fine brush. Awesome. That's fine. You could do that. Yep. And you're going to be good to go. You're going to be real good to go. Okay, let's zoom out. We're going to... You could also go in quick mask mode, too, to see where you paint it if you want. Before, after. Before, after. Again, what I would do is I would dial the opacity down so it doesn't look like, as I call, the porcelain doll effect or the plastic effect. Before, after. Before, after. Bingo. That's skin softening. Even if you do it where it's so subtle, even if you have like a real young model with very small wrinkles and her skin is already perfect and you just apply it with a very low opacity and you don't go crazy with the brush and it's very subtle, it's still nice. Especially if you're doing it for a magazine or for an article or for a paper, or if you're going to be making big prints or a fashion shoot. This happens to me all the time. No matter what the situation is, again, even if it's subtle and you don't apply it to a high extent, skin smoothing is very, very effective. All these methods that I'm showing you, the hair sharpening, the eye sharpening, the whites in the eyes, the whites in the teeth, the skin blemishes, It all comes together in portrait retouching, and they're very, very, very important techniques. How long did this just take for me to show you? Okay? You could have even, and you could do this with a lot of Photoshop methods and techniques, you could have even recorded all these steps in an action, saved this as a future action, and applied it to your next portrait shoot, where the only thing that you would have to do, right, is paint it in the areas that you want on your portrait subject. But the action would already be there, so you wouldn't have to have duplicated the layer. You wouldn't have had to do the high pass filter. You wouldn't have had to do the vivid light. You wouldn't have had to inverted it. You wouldn't have to do the Gaussian blur. The action would have did it for you, and all you would have had to do was get the paintbrush and paint it into the areas. You could have done a skin softening technique within a minute. Not bad. I'll have to do an update on actions in the future because I think that's very, very... It's a powerful thing in Photoshop. It can be applied to any technique that you do. But that's skin softening. Take care, everybody, and I'll be seeing you again on the next Photoshop tips and tricks tutorial. We got lots coming.